Well, if you're still with us, you're a Wisdom Plus member. Thanks for supporting the show. I'm here still with Simon Bown, and I want to get to the good stuff now. Simon and I always have a deeper dive on this topic. But I want to start, Simon, with I'm going to tell you a bit of an experience I had and get a sense of whether this has got anything to do with alien abductions or not. I don't have, I have seen UFOs before myself, but very briefly, and I'm not even sure, they're just lights in the sky. I was in Sedona, Arizona, doing an in-depth retreat, sort of consciousness development. It's kind of how I came to launch this podcast. I had had a lot of fascination with these topics over the years. I had been listening to you for several years, you and Jim Harold and a bunch of other folks. And I had it in my mind that I should start a podcast. And so that this was sort of the end result of that 3-day intensive. But I was sitting in a hot tub, interestingly enough, and really, really high in the sky, there were tiny little, what looked like fireflies. But we're talking, it felt like, tinier than a jet, that it was moving across the sky. And they were moving around like fireflies, 3 or 4 of them. And I thought, those aren't the Perseid meteorites, though. They're just so erratic. It was weird. It was like buzzing bees. So first of all, I mean, what do you think that might have been? I'll tell you a bit about my abduction theory in a minute, but let's start with that one. What's your perception of that? I mean, could it be?
I suppose so. I mean, there were definitely UFOs and they were unidentified. And it's one of the things of looking at how they maneuver around the sky. If they're just going in a slow, straight line, it's probably a satellite. It's easy to spot aircraft because they have anti-collision lights. That's law. They have to have those flashing lights. But if you're saying they're moving around like insects, then that's more suspicious, isn't it? Because we don't fly our aircraft like that unless, it's like a dogfight between two fighters. And you didn't hear any noise, I assume.
No noise. It's 9 o'clock at night. The sky was clear and they were extremely, extremely high up. And there was more than 2. There was probably, I would see 2 or 3 of them together, and then they would go away, and then they would come back in the same part of the sky directly above. So yeah, it was very, very anomalous for sure. Who knows what it would have been. So that was one experience. And then let me tell you, so for a period of time, I was living in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. My wife is a ghostwriter, or was a ghostwriter. She's now moved on from that career. But we moved there, and it was a time of great stress because adapting to a new culture is always stressful. So I kind of want to put what I'm about to tell you down to anxiety. But in the middle of the night, I woke up one time and I couldn't move. My body was frozen. My limbs were frozen. It was one of those, you hear about people having that kind of experience. And all I could see in the giant window that looked out was this alien face, this gray alien face glowing. And I couldn't, I tried to scream and I couldn't scream and I couldn't scream. And then I finally got a out, and then it turned into a full scream and I woke my wife up. So, I mean, again, do you think that's symptomatic of a possible abduction, or do you think, or like, was that just me being anxious about my circumstance, and it was just an anxiety dream of some sort that sort of stepped into semi-lucidity? I don't know.
It's difficult to say. When you were in that position and you're paralyzed and you're trying to scream, it doesn't sound like you're anything near dream state. It seems like you're wide awake and you got the adrenaline flowing. And you're seeing this grey alien there, then they would seem to have been checking you out for some reason. Were you taken that night? Nobody knows. But maybe hypnosis could help you with that, and you could get something out of that. But that's definitely interesting, because it's other people might say they see an owl at the window. This other woman saw the Muppets at the window. But how old were you then?
This is going back, trying to think, before the COVID. So 2018, I would have been 51, 52 years old.
Yeah, I think you know yourself enough to know whether or not you were really awake and you saw what you really saw. And it seems to me that you did see that and you were not in a dream state. I mean, because if I woke up like that, I'd certainly have the adrenaline running. I'd like to see aliens, but not at 3 o'clock in the morning in my bedroom.
No, no. It's a bit terrifying, I have to say, but it stuck with me. Well, you said you're starting to do alien regression type work. And maybe I'll give you a call and we'll set something up because it'd be interesting to explore that. Although I do have some trepidation, as you said, that it may recall some sort of trauma or anxiety, but it'd be worth exploring it for sure. So you're doing that these days, right?
Yeah, since the book came out, because I've done hundreds and hundreds of past life regressions with people. And this book came out and people started contacting me. And normally, if I was asked to, somebody contacted me to do something and I was not an expert and I didn't know what I was doing with it, I'd say, I'm not the hypnotherapist for you, but I feel I do know enough detail about what happens in these experiences that I can guide someone through it. And so, yeah, I've had people contacting me.
Amazing. Switching topics just briefly here, I did want to pick your brain a little bit more about this idea of the consciousness crossover. I think we've talked about this before on the show, but I thought would revisit it in the sense that there is some crossover, it seems, between near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, alien abduction experiences. There's a consciousness conversation here. What do you think is going on?
I think that they're all kind of linked to consciousness, and that's what we are. It's like they say, we're spirits having a human experience, not humans having a spiritual experience. And when we're out of our bodies, say in the afterlife, we're in an existence where everything connects up, and that's where the ETs are as well. That's where reincarnation happens. There's an interesting thing where you get the same after effects. People who've had near-death experiences and people who talk about alien abduction, they both say, well, not all of them, like they report they may be a little psychic before the experience and afterwards it's gone hyper. They can't wear watches, mechanical watches, because they stop working. Electrical items will malfunction around them and they may have slight poltergeist activity in the house and knockings on the wall and things like this, and maybe spiritual experiences. And so there is a connection there between these two. But it's again, I think we only really know what's happening after we've died. It's a happy thought.
That's right. I recently had the author of a book called Welsh Fairies. Her name is Mara Starling, and we had a really great time chatting about the mythology of fairies. But it's also interesting that there seems some crossover there as well. I mean, fairies abduct humans. They have in the mythology, they have done that historically. They show up in shiny suits at times and things like that. So have you considered that at all? That some of this sort of fairy, gnome, elf, troll mythology may have some connection to alien abductions? And will you address that at some point, either in yeah, maybe I haven't got all the way through this book, so maybe you mentioned it already, or maybe in the next one.
Yeah, I do mention it in this book. This is a theory that's been around a while. I think it primarily came from Jacques Vallée, a French investigator. It's an idea that this phenomenon, it's not aliens in spaceships, it's not aliens at all, it's something else. And it's always been with us. And hundreds of years ago, people might have seen them as elves or pixies or fairies, because that's how the human brain would interpret what it's seeing. But now that we've moved into a technological age, our brain sees them as aliens and spaceships. And, we've got all the science fiction around us. But it might be that our brain interprets and gives us this imagery, or whatever the phenomenon is presenting itself in that way. We don't know, if they're doing it on purpose. They're like tricksters. There's one lady I talked to in my book who said when she got to a certain age, she told her grandmother that this stuff was happening to her when she was a teenager. And her grandmother said, "Oh, don't worry about that. That's the pixies. They always bring you back." Which sounded like her grandmother was having these sorts of experiences when she was younger. And there's somebody else asked their grandmother, "How come all the windows are nailed
Fascinating.
shut?" She said there were these huge, heavy nails hammered into the windows. And her grandmother just said, "Because there's monsters out there." And she thought, she's not going to do that unless you really thought there are monsters out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Final thought before we wrap up here. What was your, I'm sure that you have lots of favorite accounts, and you've been given the fact you've written essentially, or you've assembled essentially 2 books worth of this material, with the second one coming out sometime next year. Does any one account stand out to you where you love the story, or you always tell that story? Yeah. And maybe it's one of the stories you've already told on this show, but I'm just curious to know if you have a favorite, maybe like a favorite child. Not that we ever have favorite children.
It's hard to say. There's so much stuff that I find fascinating. I could pick out one that's a missing time. There's a guy called Steve Aspin. He was working really hard, and it was 6 days a week. He was working, I think it was in a nursery, for a plant nursery, not children's nursery. So he was working all these plants all the time and all this digging and what have you. And his Saturday was his day off, and it was always every week, oh, great, Saturday I can rest. He had this massive compulsion come over him in the days before that he had to be at certain places at a certain time on Saturday morning. And he just did not know why this was happening. And I've got a chapter about this, a compulsion to go somewhere, because people report this as part of this phenomenon. But he got up at 5 a.m. and went to a building site that was local, and it was dawn and the sun was just coming up, and there was a sudden bright flash of light, and then it was daytime. It's like 2 hours had gone. And he said it's like if somebody took an old celluloid film and spliced out a bit and then reconnected it. It was that perfect connection. There was nothing in between. There was just a flash of light. And he was standing inside this half-built house, and he looked out through the hole that was going to be the window, and there was a UFO just like 30 yards from the house, this spaceship, this flying saucer. And he said it was at a weird 30-degree angle. And another thing he says is it didn't quite look like it was in our reality. And then that just disappeared. And he found he had a coin-shaped mark on his face that was kind of slightly bloody and weeping. And that he walked home with this thing on his face, and he didn't know what had happened. And that's a good example of missing time and how it works. And like I said, I got a chapter on missing time as well. The ETs have such control of our perception and our memory. They can do stuff like that.
Amazing. Yeah. Masters of physics and time. And it's incredible what it seems that they're able to do. And it sort of speaks to what perhaps our future is as human race, as we develop our technology, what we're still to uncover. So a lot of this too, points to where we may be going as a race as well. Maybe we are them, and we just them from the future.
Yeah, we just don't know. There's all sorts of theories, isn't there? I saw the Spielberg film the other day,
right,
Disclosure Day.
Go ahead.
It was interesting, certain points in it. He had deer, which is typical of screen image. This girl in her bed, and there's a deer in her bedroom, and a fox, and a little bird, a cardinal. And seeing deer as part of this screen memory thing is common. So he knows what he's doing, Spielberg, where he got this stuff from. And there's a scene where she walks to this amazing house in a forest, and it's so lit up, and it's such a nice house. And she gets inside, and you slowly realize it's not a house, it's a UFO. And again, it's that perception thing of changing what you're seeing. And I have talked to people who've reported pretty much that scenario. It looked like a house, but they got inside and it was a UFO.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. Well, for folks that are really fascinated by this or wonder if they need to do further investigation to their own experiences, I guess, first of all, tell them again the name of the book and where they can buy it. And then also tell us how they can connect to you if they want to do a regression with you, potentially around their own experiences, potentially with an abduction like me.
Yeah, so the book's called Aspects of Alien Abduction, Shocking UFO Encounters, Volume 1. That's on Amazon, on Kindle and paperback and audiobook, and the audiobook's on Spotify and other places. And my website, simonbown.com, that's a BOWN. And on there, you can go and book a consultation. It's a free call, it's 20 minutes long, and you can tell me what you're hoping to achieve with a regression, whether it's past lives or investigating perhaps something that's ET related. And then you can see whether or not you feel it's for you, or whether you feel I'm the hypnotherapist for you. You might decide to go with someone else.
Well, as somebody who's done a regression review before, you're my guy. I have great faith in your abilities, and I had a great experience with my past lives. So I highly recommend that if somebody is interested in this, that they connect with you and they take advantage of that free 20-minute call to explore it, because I think it's worthwhile. You're very talented as a hypnotherapist, and clearly a good writer and a great podcaster. So I just want to say thank you for being with me today on Woo Wisdom, and I look forward to the next time around.
Yeah, I look forward to the next time. It's always good to talk to you.
Thanks, Simon. That's great. All right, folks. Well, that's it for us. Thanks for being a Woo Wisdom Plus member. Always super value when we talk to our authors and our guests like Simon for a few more minutes, because as you can tell, we got into some good stuff here on this particular episode. So thanks a lot for that. I will say goodbye for the week, and we'll catch you next time on the next episode. As you know, my name is Andy Walker. This is Woo Wisdom. And don't forget, stay in the woo.